Thank you for checking out this little teaser of the history of the papacy and church. Here's a little taste of what's coming up soon on the History of the Papacy podcast. Now, if you like what you hear, I'd love it if you'd leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or your podcatcher of choice. If you want to support the podcast even more, consider becoming a Patreon on patreon.com/history of the papacy. There are many levels and benefits for you, and you help keep the history of the papacy going. You can learn more about all of this at historyofthepapacypodcast.com. With that, here's another piece of the mosaic of the popes of Rome and Christian church, and I will definitely be talking to you more soon. At this point, the papacy is starting to pile up enemies, you might say. Like you said, there's all the isms. Maybe just quickly before we go too far into this, when you bring up the word socialism, especially this day, you'll probably have an equal measure of people who have very strong opinions on it one way or the other. What was the situation of the socialists at that time? And maybe just very briefly, where were they coming from and who were they?
Well, the socialists, like I said, began with the rationalism movement in the early 1700s as a secret society. They were really more of an ideology, workers of the world unite. They were saying that the monarchies, along with the Catholic Church, along with the other, dominant religions, were not, treating the working men right, and that the whole government had to be reorganized. This is different from the Freemasons, who were willing to work within the government. The revolutions occurred in 1789. That was really not a socialist revolution, as opposed to the revolutions that swept across 1848. There was very, very definitely tones of socialism there. By the 1840s, Karl Marx, of course, had written his first book. I think it was I can't remember if he wrote Communist Manifesto first or Das Kapital, but it was starting to get more organized. And by the late 1800s, and by that I mean 1870s, 1880s, 1890s, when Pope Leo XIII took over in 1878, they're now starting to form political parties. So almost every country in Europe had a socialist party. Sometimes they were called the Democratic Socialists, sometimes they were called the Social Democrats, sometimes they were called the Workers' Parties. But nearly every country had a party. And as we move on,